The storm had broken hours ago, but the desert hadn't quite forgiven it. Rain still hung in the air, thin as breath, clinging to the barbed wire and the brittle grass along the highway. The Arizona night smelled of wet earth and rust. Lightning had gone, but its ghost stayed behind in the low, rolling clouds. In the ditch beside the road, a young bobcat struggled against a steel-jaw trap half buried in mud. His coat, once bright with red-gold dust, was matted dark with blood and rainwater. Every breath came sharp, visible in the cold. He pulled again, harder this time, and the trap answered with a dull metallic snap that stole the air from his lungs. Still, he didn't cry. Wild things knew better than to advertise pain. The highway above him was empty but for the slow drip of runoff and the occasional gust that smelled faintly of motor oil. He twitched his ears toward the sound of tires, a distant hum that grew until it filled the world. A pair of headlights carved through the dark, blinding white for a moment, then stopped. Doors slammed. Boots sank in the mud. Two men, their voices muffled by the wind. "Right there," one said. The beam of a flashlight cut across the ditch, landing square on the bobcat's eyes. For a heartbeat, the animal froze, reflected in that cold circle of light. Gold meeting white, defiance meeting indifference. The taller man came down first, careful but quick. "Got another one," he muttered. "They're thick this season." The other man laughed low, pulling a phone from his pocket. "Boss'll be happy. He wants more of the younger ones." The screen's glow washed his face pale. The tall man crouched. "Easy now!" His gloved hand gripped the catch-pole. The wire loop hissed as it tightened around the cat's neck. The bobcat lunged, muscles flaring, but the trap and the pole held him fast. The man leaned close, breathing hard. "Don't fight it, little guy. You'll fetch a good price if you stay pretty." A small, strained noise escaped the cat. Half growl, half gasp. The man reached into a pouch, drew out a gray collar with a small black module attached. He fastened it high around the bobcat's neck, snapping it shut with a click that sounded far too neat for what it meant. "Tracker's on," the second man said. "Let's get him logged and out before someone drives by." They left as quickly as they came, boots squelching, truck doors slamming, headlights sweeping back onto the road. The world returned to quiet, broken only by the shallow rasp of the cat's breathing. He stayed still a long time, testing the air for danger. Then, with a trembling effort, he pulled his leg free from the trap's broken teeth. The paw hung limp, bleeding into the mud. Pain rolled through him like heat, but he moved anyway, because stillness meant death. He climbed the slope in short, jerking bursts. The moon pushed through the thinning clouds, turning the wet ground to silver. The collar glinted once, then vanished in shadow. At the top, he paused, ears high, tasting the air, rain, iron, the faint sweetness of sagebrush, and something else he didn't know. Freedom, fragile and unfinished. Far off, thunder muttered one last time before giving up. And on a quiet street miles away, a girl named Mia Thompson stirred in her sleep, her hand resting on an open sketchbook. On the page, she had drawn a wildcat standing in the rain, eyes bright, back turned toward a storm she didn't yet know was real. The storm had passed, but the desert still smelled like metal and rain. Water ran thin along the roadside ditches, carrying bits of red dust toward the hills. 12-year-old Mia Thompson rode her bike through it all, her hood pulled tight, her sketchbook tucked under her jacket like a secret. Each pedal splash sounded louder than it should have in a world holding its breath after the storm. She liked this kind of weather, when everything looked new, when the sky felt closer. The air was cool and silver, the light soft enough to draw. She told herself she was taking the long way home to study the clouds, but really, Mia just didn't want to go back yet. Home was small and quiet, and full of things her mother worried about: bills, schedules, and the silence her dad had left behind. Out here, at least, Mia could think. The road dipped near an old fence line where the land opened wide. That's when she heard it. A sharp, wrong sound. Metal clanging against breath. She braked so fast the back tire slid sideways. The noise came again, thinner this time, like someone trying not to scream. Down in the ditch, tangled in wet grass, something moved. Two pale eyes stared back. Not a dog's, not anything tame. They burned from within, steady and wild. Mia's breath caught. The creature was small, spotted, soaked, trembling. A young bobcat, barely half-grown, its right foreleg caught in a steel jaw trap. The chain was pegged to a rusted stake, mud swallowing the links halfway. "Oh no!" The words escaped before she meant to say them. The cat jerked once, then froze. It didn't growl, didn't cry. Its whole body seemed to shrink around the trapped leg. The sight made Mia's chest twist. She'd seen photos of bobcats in her desert wildlife book. Sleek, beautiful hunters. But this one was broken and afraid. She glanced up and down the road. No cars, no houses, just the endless smell of wet dust and creosote. She thought about calling someone. Animal control, the sheriff. Maybe Dr. Ethan Cole, the wildlife vet who visited her school last year. But how long would they take to get here? The paw was already swelling. The cat's breath came fast and shallow. Mia swallowed hard. "Okay," she whispered. "It's just me and you." She ducked under the lowest wire of the fence and slid down the slick bank, shoes sinking into mud. The cat tried to pull away, but the trap held tight, dragging a low, painful hiss from its throat. Mia stopped. Her pulse thundered. "It's okay," she said softly. "I won't hurt you." She took off her blue rain jacket and held it wide like a shield. She remembered Dr. Cole's words from school. "Make yourself small, calm, let them see you mean no harm." The cat watched her every move, golden eyes sharp even through fear. Kneeling beside the trap, Mia studied the springs. She pressed down with both hands. The metal didn't budge. She leaned harder, sneakers braced, arms shaking. The jaws opened a sliver. Not enough. "Come on," she whispered through clenched teeth. Another push. This time, the trap gave way just enough for the cat to twist free. The leg slipped out, raw and bleeding. The trap snapped shut again with a cruel clack. Mia fell backward into the mud. The cat crouched, chest heaving, the injured paw tucked tight. "It's okay," she breathed. "You're free." The cat didn't run. Maybe it couldn't. Mia moved slowly, wrapping the jacket around its trembling body. The weight was warm and alive in her arms, lighter than she expected, but full of something fierce. She carried it to her bike, eased it into the front basket, and steadied her breath. "This is such a bad idea," she muttered, but she was already pedaling. Rain dripped from the eaves as she rolled up her driveway. The garage smelled like oil and detergent, home and danger at once. Mia set the blue bundle on the workbench. The cat blinked up at her, dazed but breathing. She reached to touch the edge of its fur and froze when a voice came from behind. "Mia," her mother called, weary but firm. "Why is the floor wet?" Nora stepped into the light, stopped short, and stared at the bundle on the table. Mia turned, soaked, shaking, a wild thing in her own skin. He was in a trap, she said. I couldn't just leave him. The smell of antiseptic and wet fur filled the small wildlife clinic as Dr. Ethan Cole leaned over the work table. Rain drummed softly on the tin roof, matching the steady rhythm of his breath. His hands, broad, steady, weathered, moved with the calm precision of someone who'd spent too many nights saving broken things that didn't want to be saved. On the table lay the young bobcat, wrapped in a faded towel, half sedated, but still restless. Every few minutes his muscles rippled with a wild memory. Pain, fear, defiance. Ethan touched the swollen leg gently, his voice low and steady. Easy now, buddy. You're tougher than the steel that caught you. Across the room, Mia Thompson stood on tiptoe, trying to see past his shoulder. Her shoes left wet prints on the linoleum. She'd barely spoken since the drive here, just clutched the blue rain jacket she'd used to carry the cat. Her mother sat near the door, arms folded, jaw tight. The room smelled like tension wrapped in worry. Ethan cleaned the wound with practiced care. The paw was bad, deep punctures, swelling around the bone, but not hopeless. He'll keep the leg, he said finally, cutting the silence. Lucky you found him when you did. Mia exhaled for what felt like the first time in an hour. He didn't even cry, she said softly. They usually don't, Ethan replied. Crying's for creatures that believe someone's listening. He reached for a small flashlight and angled it along the cat's neck. That's when he saw it, half hidden beneath the wet fur. A thin gray collar, the kind used for tracking. At first it looked standard, but when his thumb brushed the surface, he felt a small indentation, not like any tag he knew. What's that? Mia asked, leaning closer. Ethan frowned, running a finger along the smooth metal. Not one of ours, he muttered. It's not from any state wildlife program either. No serial number, no logo. He lifted it closer to the light, eyes narrowing. This isn't standard issue. Nora rose from her chair. You mean someone put that on him? Looks that way. Ethan's voice dropped. Could be a private research tag, but the build's off. More like GPS hardware, military grade or commercial tracking. He glanced at Mia. Did you see anyone near where you found him? Mia shook her head. Just the trap and the mud. Ethan turned back to the table, jaw set. He unlatched the collar carefully, dropping it into a tray. The tiny diode on the side blinked once. Red, then went dark. That's not good, he murmured. What do you mean? Nora asked, worry edging into her voice. It pinged when I touched it, he said. Which means someone out there just lost signal, and they'll know it. The room seemed to tighten around that thought. Outside, a coyote called somewhere in the distance, long and low. Ethan stitched the final wound, wrapped the paw, and set the cat's head gently back onto the towel. He'll need a few days to rest, he said. He's dehydrated but strong. Wild hearts usually are. Mia stepped closer. Can I stay with him? Her mother started to protest, but Ethan raised a hand. For a bit. He's calm with you. He handed Mia a folded blanket. Keep your voice soft. Let him smell that he's safe. Mia sat cross-legged near the table. The cat's breathing was shallow but steady. His eyes opened once, gold and glassy, and met hers. For a heartbeat, the world felt smaller, quieter. Just two creatures who didn't quite belong where they were. Ethan cleaned his instruments, his gaze flicking again to the collar. I'll run the serial through the state database tonight, he said. If it's what I think it is, we'll need to call Sheriff Alvarez in the morning. Why? Nora asked. He hesitated, then looked at her squarely. Because collars like that don't track wildlife, he said. They track property. The words hung in the Sautop's air like static. Mia looked up, frowning. Property? Ethan nodded. Someone owns that cat, or thinks they do, and people like that don't let their investments wander far. A gust of wind rattled the windows. The rain outside grew heavier again, whispering against the walls like a warning. Mia reached out, resting her fingers near the cat's paw without touching it. He's not anyone's, she whispered. He's free now. Ethan glanced at her, at the dirt-streaked face, the fierce certainty in her eyes, and felt something shift inside him, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope edged with fear. He turned off the overhead lamp, letting the clinic sink into half-darkness. Let's hope you're right, he said quietly. 3 days after the storm, the desert began to dry, and the air tasted of dust again. The puddles vanished from the road, leaving behind white rings of salt like tiny ghosts of rain. Inside the small wildlife clinic, Mia Thompson sat by the window, her elbows on her knees, watching sunlight move across the floor toward the table where the young bobcat rested. He was awake now, though weak, eyes half open, ears twitching at every sound. The wound on his leg was wrapped neatly in white gauze, his breathing slow but steady. Dr. Ethan Cole called him Rusty after the faint red cast of his fur, but Mia already thought of him as something closer than that, like a secret she wasn't ready to share. Ethan stood at the counter, typing notes into his old computer. You've got a patient with fight in him, he said. That's the good kind. Mia smiled faintly. He doesn't look like he trusts you yet. Can't blame him, Ethan said without looking up. Most of his kind only see people right before something bad happens. Nora leaned against the doorway, arms crossed but softer than before. And what happens now? Now, Ethan said, shutting down the monitor. He rests. I'll keep him here until the swelling's down. After that, we'll see. Mia traced her finger along the table's edge. Can I still visit? You can visit, he said. But no touching, no feeding. He needs to remember what he is. Ethan moved to the far counter, where a small metal tray held the gray collar they'd found on Rusty. He'd cleaned it that morning, hoping to find some clue, numbers, symbols, a tag, but it was blank. When he held it to the light, a thin red diode blinked once, then went dark again, like a heartbeat hiding under skin. Any luck finding who made it? Nora asked. Ethan shook his head. Not yet. I ran it through the state database. Nothing. But the signal pattern doesn't lie. Someone was tracking him, and if they're serious, they'll come looking. That thought hung heavy between them. Mia turned toward the window, staring at the long wash of desert beyond the fence. A hawk circled in the distance, slow and easy. Somewhere out. There, the rest of Rusty's kind were moving through the brush, silent, unseen. He should be out there, she said softly. Not stuck in here. Ethan studied her face. You've got a good heart, Mia, but letting go is part of helping. Wild things can't be kept safe and free at the same time. Mia nodded, but the words didn't settle. They fluttered around in her chest like a trapped moth. By afternoon, the air shimmered with heat. Ethan walked them to the parking lot. The horizon glowed gold and sharp, the kind of color that promised another dry season. The smell of burned grass rode the wind, old fire scars coming back to life. We'll have to keep watch, Ethan said quietly. Santa Ana wines are early this year. That night, Mia lay awake, the hum of the swamp cooler filling her room. She thought of the bobcat's eyes, steady, bright, afraid of nothing. She wondered if he understood that she had saved him, or if in his mind she was just another part of the trap. Outside, crickets started their slow, broken music. The town had gone quiet, except for the far-off rumble of trucks on the highway. Then, faintly, she heard it, a sound that didn't belong. A low whine, mechanical, fading in and out, like an engine idling too long near the edge of town. She pushed back the curtain. Across the street, a white pickup sat parked beneath the old billboard, engine off, headlights dim. For a moment, she thought she saw movement inside. A glow, a flicker, then nothing. The truck pulled away without hurry, rolling down the road toward the hills where Ethan's clinic stood. Mia's stomach tightened. She whispered to the darkness, "They're coming for him." She didn't sleep the rest of the night. By dawn, the heat had already risen, and the desert was awake again, all shimmer and silence. The smell of smoke drifted faintly from somewhere beyond the ridge. The first wind of the dry season came rolling in, hot, restless, carrying with it the promise of both life and ruin. And somewhere in the thin distance between them, a signal blinked red once, then vanished into the dust. The sun rose over the Arizona desert like a pale coin scraped thin. Heat shimmered across the blacktop highway long before noon, erasing the last traces of the storm. Dr. Ethan Cole squinted through the windshield of his old pickup, the gray collar sitting on the passenger seat beside him. Every few seconds, its tiny red diode blinked once, alive again, whispering data no one had asked for. He had connected the collar to an old GPS receiver that morning, running the signal through a tracking program borrowed from his days consulting with the State Wildlife Bureau. The line it drew on the screen didn't make sense. Long, precise routes looping through sections of private land north of town, then stopping, always, at the same set of coordinates near the canyon ridge. That ridge belonged to Blake Harrow, local entrepreneur, owner of Harrow Wild Encounters, the eco-tourism ranch that let visitors pose beside sedated mountain lions and bottle-feed orphaned foxes. Ethan had never trusted him. The man's smile was too smooth, his paperwork too clean. Now the map was telling him why. When Mia arrived at the clinic after school, Ethan was still staring at the screen. "You said he was wearing that thing when you found him?" he asked, voice taut. She nodded. "It blinked when you touched it, remember?" "Yeah." Ethan tapped the receiver. "It's still blinking. Someone's pinging this signal, checking for movement." Mia's eyes widened. "You mean, they know where he is?" "They think they do." He unplugged the cord. "I've kept it powered down most of the day, but the last few pings show a trail. Whoever used this wasn't tracking one animal. There are at least 6 IDs tied to this device." "6?" she repeated, the number catching in her throat. Ethan turned the laptop so she could see. On the map, 6 faint lines curved and tangled across the desert like threads of smoke, each starting in the open wilderness, then funneling toward one bright point: Harrow's property line. Nora, who'd come to pick up her daughter, stepped closer. "Are you saying that man's collecting wild cats?" Ethan hesitated. "Maybe not just cats. Whatever this network is, it's not legal. GPS trackers like this cost more than a car payment. Someone's funding it." Mia looked at Rusty, asleep on the blanket behind them. "If they caught him once, they'll try again." Ethan nodded. "That's why I'm not leaving this alone." He reached for his phone. Sheriff Alvarez answered on the 3rd ring, his gravelly voice half drowned in radio chatter. "Cole? You sound like trouble." "Probably," Ethan said. "You remember Blake Harrow's ranch? The one with the guided wildlife tours? Yeah, my niece took selfies with a bobcat there last summer. That bobcat might not have been his, Ethan said quietly. I think I've got proof of illegal capture, maybe trafficking. I need to show you something. The sheriff sighed. You at the clinic? For now. I'll swing by in an hour. Don't poke the bear till I get there. Ethan hung up, rubbing the bridge of his nose. He'll come. But if we're right, we're not just talking about some tourist gimmick. Mia was still watching the map, tracing the lines with her finger. It's like they have invisible fences, she said softly. Places where freedom stops. He looked at her, a kid, but already seeing the world for what it was. Yeah, he said. Exactly that. When Sheriff Alvarez arrived, the heat was beginning to sink from the sky, the desert turning to copper. He stepped into the clinic, hat low, badge glinting in the slanted light. Evening, he said, scanning the room until his gaze landed on the collar. Chateau, that the toy causing all this noise? Ethan powered up the laptop again. You tell me if this looks right to you. The sheriff leaned in, hands on his belt. The blinking lines appeared, each ending at the same point north of town. That's Harrow's place, he said flatly. Every signal leads there, Ethan said. And if you overlay the timestamps, they match the days tourists post new animal photos online. Different animals, same background. Alvarez frowned. That's evidence of possession, not trafficking. You'll need more than a hunch. I'm not asking for a warrant, Ethan said. Just eyes. Drive by his property tomorrow. See what your gut tells you. The sheriff studied him for a long moment. My guts told me you're trouble since you quit the department, he said, but there was no malice in it. All right, I'll take a look. He tipped his hat to Nora and Mia. You two stay out of this, understood? If Harrow's up to something, I don't want a 12-year-old at the center of it. After he left, the clinic fell quiet again. The last daylight bled orange through the window, striping the floor across Rusty's blanket. Mia crouched beside him, whispering something only the cat could hear. Ethan packed the collar and laptop into a steel case. We keep this between us for now, he said. If Harrow's got people on payroll, word travels fast. Mia looked up. Do you think he's coming for Rusty? I think, Ethan said, locking the case, that whoever lost this collar doesn't like losing anything. He switched off the light, leaving only the soft hum of the refrigerator and the slow rhythm of Rusty's breathing. Outside, the desert had gone still again, waiting. The invisible lines on Ethan's map glowed faintly on the dark screen, thin veins of light stretching across miles of open land, all pulsing toward one silent heart. And somewhere out there, under the canyon ridge, that heart was still beating. The next morning came sharp and cloudless, the kind of desert morning that felt like it could burn the truth out of anything. Mia Thompson sat in the passenger seat of Ethan Cole's truck, clutching her sketchbook like a lifeline. The road stretched ahead, 2 lanes of cracked asphalt, lined with sunburned grass and the occasional skeleton of a saguaro cactus. They were heading toward Harrow Wild Encounters, the ranch she'd only ever seen on billboards. Touch the wild, feed a fox, hug a lynx. Are you sure about this? Nora's voice replayed in Mia's head. You're not an investigator. You're a child. But Ethan had promised it was only a visit. They'd booked a public tour that morning, posing as curious locals. Nothing dangerous, just questions and observation. Still, something in his tone, too calm, too practiced, told her this wasn't a simple field trip. The ranch came into view at the end of a dirt road lined with faded flags. Beyond the wooden gate stood a wide complex of barns, corrals, and small enclosures. At first glance, it looked clean, professional, too professional. Everything was painted the same desert beige, everything branded with the same smiling Bobcat logo. A handful of tourists milled about, taking photos of a fox asleep under a heat lamp. Music played softly from hidden speakers, some cheerful country tune that felt wrong here. Ethan parked, pocketed his phone, and gave Mia a look. Stay close, eyes open, mouth closed. They joined the small tour led by a woman in khaki and mirrored sunglasses. "Welcome to Harrow Wild Encounters," she chirped. "Our animals are rescues who can't return to the wild. Every visit helps us feed and care for them." Her smile was bright enough to make Mia squint. Behind her, an armed security guard stood in the shade, pretending not to watch. As the group walked along the trail, Mia noticed things that didn't match the story. The animals were too quiet. The air smelled faintly of bleach and sedatives. One lynx sat unnaturally still, eyes glazed, tail twitching in slow, mechanical rhythm. She whispered, "Something's wrong with them." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Keep looking." At the far end of the path stood a large steel building half hidden behind the visitor center. The guide called it the rehabilitation unit. "That area's restricted," she said quickly, steering the group the other way. "Medical quarantine, you understand." But Mia's eyes caught something the others missed. A chain-link door left ajar, a man in uniform carrying a crate marked with yellow tape. Through the gap, she saw movement. A cage, glass-walled and lit from within, holding 3 young bobcats. One of them limped. Her breath hitched. "Ethan!" He followed her gaze and froze. The guard by the shed turned, saw them looking, and started walking their way. Ethan smiled at the guide. "Would you mind if I took a closer look? I'm a licensed wildlife vet. Used to work with state rescue programs." The guide's smile faltered. "That's not possible, sir. Those animals aren't, cleared for viewing." "Not cleared," Ethan repeated softly. "Or not legal?" The guard's voice cut in. "Sir, step back." His hand rested near his belt, too close to the holster for comfort. Ethan raised his palms. "Relax. Just curious." Mia tugged at his sleeve. "Please," she whispered, eyes wide. "Let's go." He nodded once, steering her away. The moment the guard turned his back, he slipped his phone from his pocket and took a photo over his shoulder. The sound was masked by the breeze, but Mia saw the tiny flash reflected in the glass wall. Inside, one of the caged bobcats lifted its head. The look in its eyes, confused, desperate, followed her as she walked away. They reached the parking lot without another word. Ethan waited until the gate disappeared in the rearview mirror before he spoke. "That building wasn't a rehab unit," he said. "It was a holding bay. Those animals are being prepped for transport." "Transport where?" Mia asked. He glanced at the phone screen. The photo was blurry but clear enough. Metal tags on cages, labels with barcodes and destinations. One read, "Port of Los Angeles. Private consignment." "Out of state," he said grimly. "Maybe out of the country." Mia hugged her sketchbook to her chest. "So they're stealing from the wild and selling them." Exactly. Rusty wasn't the only one caught. The realization sat heavy between them. The desert rolled by, endless and empty, as if trying to hide the things humans refused to see. A hawk traced lazy circles overhead, riding the thermals. Mia followed it with her eyes, wishing she could tell it to fly faster, farther, to somewhere safe. At the clinic that evening, Ethan loaded the photos onto his computer. "If Sheriff Alvarez gets a warrant, this could shut Harrow down," he said. "But we'll need to move fast. Once they know they've been seen." A noise from outside cut him off. The distant rumble of an engine, then headlights sweeping across the front window. Mia's pulse jumped. Ethan peeked through the blinds. A dark pickup slowed by the gate, idled for a few seconds, then drove away. "They're checking," he murmured. "They already know someone was watching." Mia stepped closer to Rusty's enclosure. The bobcat, now stronger, raised his head and met her gaze. His golden eyes flickered with a kind of wild certainty, as if he understood more than he should. Ethan locked the door and killed the lights. "From here on out," he said quietly, "we play this smart." Outside, the desert swallowed the sound of retreating tires. Inside, only the low hum of the fridge and Rusty's breathing remained. The night felt too still, too thin, as though the whole world were holding its breath. By sunrise the next day, the wind had turned dry again, sweeping through the desert like a whisper that wanted to erase everything. Dr. Ethan Cole sat at his cluttered desk, the blinds half open, sunlight cutting across a scatter of papers, photos, and coffee rings. On the screen glowed the image he and Mia had taken the day before. The cages at Harrow Wild Encounters, each tagged with coded labels and shipping marks. The more he looked at them, the more the pattern made sense. They weren't rescue animals, they were merchandise. He clicked through the metadata, matching tag numbers with GPS logs from the stolen collar. 6 animals, all with similar routes. The coordinates traced a tidy path. Capture points in the northern hills, delivery to Harrow's property, then shipments south and west, toward the highway that fed into the port. It was a trade route, invisible but precise, and now Ethan could see the chain. A knock at the door jolted him back. Sheriff Alvarez filled the doorway, broad-shouldered, hat in hand, eyes scanning the room. "You weren't kidding," he said. "That's a full case of violations." He whistled low. "Illegal transport, falsified rescue permits, maybe worse." Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. "You can't prove ownership from photos alone." "That's why I brought this." Alvarez held up a thin envelope. "Temporary inspection warrant. Limited access, but enough to poke around the ranch." Mia, who had been sketching quietly near Rusty's cage, looked up. "You're going there?" The sheriff nodded. "Just to look. You're staying put." "Good," Ethan said, "but don't go alone." By mid-afternoon, the sheriff's cruiser rolled through the gates of Harrow Wild Encounters. Blake Harrow was waiting, leaning against the porch rail of his office, all charm and sunburn. His sunglasses reflected the flashing light on Alvarez's dash. "Sheriff," he said, voice dripping honey, "to what do I owe the visit?" "Routine check," Alvarez said. "Some questions about your rehabilitation permits." "Of course." Harrow smiled too easily. "We're always happy to cooperate. My paperwork's in order." But the tour he offered was too smooth. Every door opened before Alvarez could ask. Every enclosure spotless. Every animal conveniently drowsy. When the sheriff mentioned the restricted building, Harrow's smile never faltered. "That unit's sealed for quarantine," he said. "I can't have you spreading contagion." "Funny thing," Alvarez said mildly. "Wildlife Services says they haven't logged a quarantine order for you." Harrow tilted his head. Maybe they lost the memo. It was a standoff wrapped in politeness. Alvarez took a slow walk around the perimeter, noting the new locks, the tire marks near the side gate, the faint hum of generators behind the main barn. When he returned to his cruiser, Harrow's smile was still in place, but thinner. As Alvarez drove away, one of Harrow's men stepped from the shadows. "They're getting nosy," he said. Harrow's expression hardened. "Then let's remind them curiosity comes with a price." That evening, the wind picked up again, rattling the tin awning above the clinic door. Ethan was writing a report for the Wildlife Bureau when the lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. He frowned, glanced at the clock, 10:42 p.m. Rusty stirred in his crate, ears twitching. "Easy, boy," Ethan murmured. Outside, a truck passed on the highway. Or maybe it slowed. Then came a sound, soft, deliberate, the scrape of gravel under boots. Ethan stood. Before he could reach the door, glass shattered at the back window. He ducked as a brick clattered across the floor, trailing shards and dust. Attached to it was a scrap of paper with 3 words scrawled in red marker. "Stay out, Doc," Rusty hissed, pressing himself into the corner of his cage. Mia's voice called from the back room, sleepy, startled. "Ethan! What was that?" "Stay down," he barked, moving fast. He killed the lights, grabbed the phone, but the line was dead. Outside, the sound of the truck grew fainter, then vanished altogether into the wind. Minutes passed before he exhaled. He turned the sign on the door to closed and checked every lock twice. Then he picked up the brick, studying the handwriting, jagged, quick, angry. "They know," he whispered. Mia appeared at the doorway in her pajamas, pale under the dim emergency light. "Was it them?" He nodded. "They're warning us." Rusty's golden eyes gleamed through the shadows, wide and fierce. The room felt smaller, the air thick with a silence that didn't belong. Mia looked from the cat to Ethan. "What do we do now?" He hesitated, then answered, voice low but sure. "We don't stop. We just stop being predictable." By morning, the sheriff was back. The brick sat in a plastic evidence bag on the counter. "Classic intimidation," Alvarez said. "Means you're onto something real." "They're watching," Ethan replied. "Maybe bugging phones, maybe the clinic. Then we move fast." The sheriff glanced at Mia, who was listening from the corner. "We'll push for a full warrant. Get wildlife enforcement involved. But you two need to keep quiet." Ethan nodded. "What about Harrow?" "He's sweating," Alvarez said. "You spooked him. That's leverage." He tipped his hat toward Rusty's cage. "Keep your little witness safe. If they came for you once, they might come for him too." After the sheriff left, the clinic felt emptier. Ethan sat on the stool beside the cage, running a hand over the worn notebook where he'd logged every detail. The trap, the collar, the map, the threats. A perfect chain, each link connecting to the next. Only now, he realized, he was part of it too. Mia set a cup of coffee beside him, her hand steady despite the fear in her eyes. "They're scared," she said. "That means we're winning, right?" Ethan managed a tired smile. "It means the truth's close, but close and safe aren't the same thing." Outside, the desert wind howled again, tugging at the roof and rattling the windows. Rusty lifted his head, nose twitching toward the open horizon. His eyes caught the light and burned like small suns. The chain had been revealed. And somewhere down that line, the people who built it were already pulling back. The morning came too still, the kind of silence that warned of heat. Dust drifted through the half-open blinds of Ethan Cole's clinic, turning the air gold. The broken window had been patched with plywood, but the place still smelled faintly of glass and fear. On the work table lay the gray collar again. Ethan had spent half the night prying at its casing, careful not to trigger the transmitter. Now the shell sat open, its insides exposed, tiny circuits, a microchip, and a small black cube no larger than a fingertip. Not just a GPS beacon, a recorder. When he connected it to his computer, a flood of data scrolled across the screen. Coordinates, dates, even brief bursts of audio, static, voices, a man's laugh. Mia leaned over his shoulder. "Is that them?" "Yeah," Ethan said quietly. "And I think they've been using Rusty as bait." He clicked through the files, overlaying the points on his map. The route wasn't random after all. Every place the collar had stopped corresponded to a known den site, waterhole, or migratory corridor. Each time Rusty was released, other bobcats came near, drawn by scent, curiosity, or instinct. Then new coordinates appeared within hours, tightening toward Harrow's property. "They're not hunting just one," Ethan murmured. "They're collecting entire groups." Mia's face went pale. "He led them to his own family." Ethan hesitated, then nodded. "Unknowingly, yes. That's why the pattern repeats. Rusty was the tracker, and the trap." The weight of that truth settled like sand in a wound. Rusty, lying in his crate near the back wall, shifted restlessly, his injured paw twitching. The bandage was off now, the leg healing, the muscles twitching with strength again. He caught their voices, and for a moment, his golden eyes met Mia's. There was intelligence there, uneasy, searching, as if some part of him sensed what they'd discovered. Sheriff Alvarez arrived half an hour later, dust trailing behind his cruiser. "I've got bad news and worse news," he said, stepping inside. Bad news. Wildlife enforcement's dragging their feet on that full warrant. Paperwork, politics, all that jazz. Worse news. Harrow's trucks rolled out before dawn. 3 of them. Headed south. Ethan pulled up the map again. He's moving them. Probably to another site. Maybe even out of state. Alvarez rubbed his jaw. "I can put out a watch, but if he's using private transport, they'll blend in with livestock hauls. We'll lose him by afternoon." Mia slammed her sketchbook shut. "Then we can't wait." The sheriff looked at her. "Kid, this isn't a school project." "She's right," Ethan interrupted. "If we let him move those animals, they're gone. The data shows another pickup point tonight, see here?" He pointed to a blinking coordinate north of town, near the burned wash. "That's where the signal ends every night, probably his field trap site." Alvarez frowned. "You're suggesting we catch him in the act?" Ethan gave a grim nod. "We get proof! Real proof!" The sheriff sighed, muttering a curse under his breath. "You two will be the death of me." By twilight, the desert had changed again. The wind carried heat that shimmered off the rocks, and the color of the sky melted from copper to indigo. Ethan parked his truck half a mile from the ridge, killed the engine, and checked his camera. Mia sat beside him, a flashlight gripped in both hands. "You stay here," he said for the 3rd time. "I'm smaller," she whispered back. "I can get closer without being seen." "Mia," she was already sliding out the door. The ridge loomed ahead, dotted with mesquite and old fence posts. She crept along a dry stream bed, heart hammering, until the sound reached her. Engines idling low, men's voices, the metallic slam of a gate. Peering through the brush, she saw a clearing lit by a single floodlight. 2 trucks were parked beside a chain-link pen covered with tarp. Inside the pen, eyes glinted. 4, maybe 5 bobcats pacing in circles. Then Blake Harrow stepped into the light. He was taller up close, his smile gone. his shirt rolled to the elbows. "Move them quick," he barked. "We've got a 3-hour window before the next check-in." Mia fumbled for her phone, hands shaking, and started recording. One of the men hauled a cage toward the truck bed. The bobcat inside thrashed once, then went still after a jab of something shiny. Her stomach turned. She wanted to run, but a branch cracked under her knee. Head snapped toward the sound. "Hey!" a voice shouted. "Someone's out there!" She bolted. Behind her, feet pounded, flashlights slicing through the dark. "Stop, kid!" someone yelled. A gun racked. Then another sound, wild, low, furious. From the ridge came a blur of movement. Rusty. He'd followed her. He hit the first man like a bolt of flame, claws flashing, a snarl that cut through the desert air. The others stumbled back, shouting. Mia dove behind a boulder, panting, clutching her phone. The floodlight swung, catching Ethan at the edge of the clearing, camera raised. "Sheriff's on his way," he shouted. "Drop it, Harrow!" But Harrow was already running for his truck. Tires screamed against dirt. Headlights flared, and the vehicle tore down the road into the dark. Ethan grabbed Mia's hand, pulling her to her feet. "You okay?" She nodded, breathless. "Rusty, he's—" The bobcat stood in the floodlight, panting, blood streaked across his shoulder. He looked at them once, ears flat, and limped back into the shadows of the canyon. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. The sheriff's convoy crested the ridge minutes later, blue lights flashing against the rocks. Alvarez jumped from his car. "Jesus, Cole, you weren't kidding!" They loaded the tranquilized animals into official transport crates. The evidence, photos, video, GPS tags, everything was irrefutable. The chain had snapped at last. As the sheriff coordinated his team, Mia stood at the canyon's edge, scanning the dark. Rusty was gone, swallowed by the wilderness he belonged to. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand, half from relief, half from something deeper. Ethan joined her quietly. "He'll be all right." "He saved me," she said. "Maybe he just wanted to finish what you started." The night breeze stirred her hair. Somewhere far off, a wild cry echoed against the canyon walls. A sound fierce, lonely, and free. For the first time, Mia didn't flinch. She smiled. The night came in without warning. One of those desert nights where the air felt too thin to breathe. The ridge above Harrow Wild Encounters was black against a bruised sky. Down below, floodlights swept the grounds, painting the dirt white and gold. Ethan Cole crouched behind a boulder, binoculars pressed to his eyes. "2 guards by the west pen," he murmured. "One more at the loading dock." Sheriff Alvarez adjusted his vest, checking the small camera clipped to his chest. "We go in quiet. If we're lucky, we'll be out before they know we were here." And Mia Thompson, too young to be there, too brave to stay home, sat in the passenger seat of the sheriff's backup SUV, parked half a mile down the access road. She was supposed to wait, to watch, to stay safe. But her hands were shaking anyway. Inside her jacket pocket was Ethan's spare camera and a folded note in his handwriting. "If things go wrong, call for help and run east toward the dry creek." She reread it 3 times before the radio crackled to life. "Moving in," Ethan's voice whispered. The gate lock snapped with a muted click. The sheriff slipped through first, Ethan close behind. The ranch that had looked so bright and family-friendly by day now felt wrong. Too quiet, too clean, like a stage set after the actors had gone home. Crates lined the loading bay, stacked 3 high. Each was marked with stenciled codes: Lynx 02, Bobcat 09, Fox 05. Ethan knelt beside one, running a hand along the cold metal latch. "Still warm," he said softly. "They're moving stock tonight." Alvarez checked the tags. "These match your photos." He turned toward the dark building at the back, the supposed rehab unit. "That's where the rest are." Inside, the smell hit first: ammonia, fear, and something sweet and chemical. Rows of cages lined the walls, each holding something alive and wrong. Sedated animals, pulse monitors beeping faintly, tranquilizer drips taped to the bars. At the far end, a desk cluttered with export manifests and injection vials. Ethan snapped photo after photo. "He's not hiding anymore," he muttered. "He's mass-producing it." Then a voice cut through the air. "You shouldn't be here, Doc." Blake Harrow stepped from the shadows, gun in hand, his smile stripped away. "You've been a thorn in my side for weeks. I figured you'd show up sooner or later." Alvarez lifted his hands, calm but ready. "Put it down, Blake. You're done. We've got the proof." "You've got pictures," Harrow sneered. "You think that's enough? Half the people who buy from me sit in your donor lists." Ethan stepped forward, keeping his voice level. "Whatever they pay you, it ends tonight." The sheriff's radio hissed, static, then a burst of shouting. Someone outside had spotted movement. Lights flared. Harrow glanced toward the window, cursed, and fired once. A warning shot that split the air. The sound cracked across the desert like thunder. Mia heard it from the SUV. She flinched, heart racing. "No, no, no!" She grabbed the radio. "Ethan, are you okay?" Static, then a single word. "Run." But she didn't. She opened the door and sprinted toward the ranch, sneakers pounding the dirt. Inside, chaos bloomed. Guards poured into the hallway. Ethan ducked behind the cages, grabbing the sheriff's dropped flashlight. "Get to the generator," he shouted. "Kill the power." Alvarez nodded, vanishing through the side corridor. The lights flickered, then died, plunging the room into darkness. Only the pulse monitors glowed, small, blinking red eyes in the dark. Harrow's voice echoed from somewhere near the door. "You can't hide forever, Cole." Ethan crawled low, guiding himself by memory. He reached the desk, swept the paperwork into his bag, and yanked a hard drive from the computer tower. The evidence was there, the shipments, the payments, everything. But when he turned, a beam of light caught his face. "Found you," Harrow growled. A shape lunged between them, a flash of movement, muscle, and sound. Rusty. The Bobcat hit Harrow's arm, claws raking. The gun went off, shattering a fluorescent light above. Sparks fell like small meteors. Harrow screamed, stumbling back. Ethan grabbed the weapon, kicked it aside, and shouted, "Go, Rusty, go!" The Bobcat hissed, then darted through the open door into the night. Sirens wailed in the distance. Backup. Sheriff Alvarez burst back through the hallway, flashlight swinging. "We're clear! They're pulling out!" Harrow lunged again, wild-eyed, but Alvarez met him halfway, dropping him with a single punch. The man hit the ground, gasping, blood mixing with dust. "Blake Harrow," the sheriff said, breathing hard. "You're under arrest for illegal capture, trafficking, and being a damn fool." Ethan leaned against the desk, chest heaving. Through the shattered window, the horizon flickered orange. At first he thought it was more lights. Then the smell hit him. Smoke. "The generators," he said. "They've caught fire." Flames licked the corner of the barn, climbing fast in the wind. Alvarez barked into his radio for fire crews. Ethan grabbed the cages, throwing latches open. "Get them out!" Mia appeared in the doorway, face lit by the glow. "Ethan, He froze. "What are you—" "I couldn't just wait," she yelled over the rising roar. Together they hauled open the last crate. A fox bolted, then a lynx. The animals scattered into the dark, fleeing the fire. Ethan grabbed Mia's arm. "Move!" They ran through the smoke, coughing, eyes stinging. Behind them, the building cracked and roared, collapsing inward. The night sky burned. From the ridge above, Rusty stood watching, a silhouette against the flames. For a heartbeat, his eyes met Mia's through the haze. Then he turned and vanished into the canyon. Ethan wrapped an arm around her shoulders as the fire crews arrived, sirens cutting through the chaos. "It's over," he said. But even as he spoke, he knew it wasn't. Because sometimes truth didn't end things. It just set them alight. The fire spread faster than any of them imagined. What had started as a thin orange tongue on the horizon turned into a wall of heat devouring the hills. The desert, dry as bone after months without rain, gave itself up in seconds. Sagebrush flared like matches. The wind howled, feeding the flames oxygen and fury. By dawn, the sky had turned the color of copper and smoke. At the wildlife clinic, Dr. Ethan Cole worked beside Sheriff Alvarez, handing out masks and water bottles to volunteers. "The fires jumped the ridge," the sheriff said grimly. "If it reaches Route 19, it'll cut off the north side of town." Ethan wiped sweat and soot from his face. "That's where the school buses come through." The sheriff froze. "They left early for the field trip, didn't they?" Ethan's stomach dropped. "Mia's with them." The school bus rattled down the 2-lane road toward the state preserve, the children chattering until the smoke thickened. The driver, Mr. Howard, coughed, squinting through the haze. "Stay calm, kids. We're turning back." But the wind had shifted. Smoke rolled down the valley in choking waves. Mia pressed her face to the window. Behind them, flames crept over the ridge, chasing the highway like a living thing. The bus sputtered. The engine coughed once, twice, and died. Mr. Howard tried the ignition again. Nothing. "We're overheating," he muttered, gripping the wheel. Panic rose like the temperature. Mia stood, looking out the front. The road ahead was gone, just a swirl of orange dust and ash. "We can't stay here," she said. "The fire's coming fast." He hesitated. "We wait for help." But help wasn't coming fast enough. Through the smoke, Mia caught movement on the slope. Small, quick, alive. A shape she knew even through the haze. Rusty, his fur streaked with soot, eyes bright against the dark. He stood on a boulder above them, tail flicking once before he turned and bounded down the ravine. Mia's heart leapt. "He's here," she cried. The driver stared. "What?" "The Bobcat. He's showing us something." "Mia, sit down." But she was already at the door, pulling the handle. The heat outside hit like an oven. Ash stung her face, smoke clawed her throat. She coughed but kept her eyes on the moving blur ahead. Rusty turned once, looked at her, then darted through the brush. Something in her knew. Follow him or burn. "Everyone out!" Sheikh shouted back. "Now! We have to move!" The children hesitated until the first spark landed on the bus roof, hissing. Then panic broke the stillness. Mr. Howard grabbed the emergency kit, yelling for order. Mia led the line, her voice steady even as her legs shook. Rusty vanished into a dry channel, a shallow wash half hidden by mesquite. Mia waved for the others. "Down here, stay low." The fire roared overhead, eating oxygen from the air. The world turned gold and black. Each breath tasted like metal. The ground trembled as trees exploded in sudden flame. Mia stumbled once, nearly falling, but a small shape darted back, Rusty, circling her legs before surging forward again. He never slowed, always just far enough ahead to be seen. The wash curved behind a low ridge where the wind died. Smoke thinned. For a moment, the world returned in pieces. Sand, sky, the silhouettes of saguaros burning like candles. "We're in a dry creek bed," Mr. Howard gasped. "Keep moving." They followed Rusty's trail through the gulch until they reached a cleft in the rock, a narrow gap leading into a shallow cave. The air inside was cooler, heavy but breathable. The children crawled in first, huddling close as the driver and Mia came last. Outside, the wind screamed. Flames rolled across the ridge above, but the stone walls held. Mia crouched near the entrance, watching the world burn. Rusty sat just beyond the threshold, his fur glowing red from reflected firelight. She whispered, "You saved us." He looked back once, ears pricked toward the sound of sirens rising in the distance. Then he turned away, staring into the blaze as if daring it closer. Minutes passed, then an hour. Finally, the wind changed again. The flames retreated the way they had come, leaving behind a smoldering wasteland of gray and silence. When rescue trucks reached them at last, the firefighters could hardly believe it. The bus had melted into its frame, yet 50 yards away, every child was alive. The fire captain turned to Mia, stunned. "How'd you find this place?" She looked toward the canyon, where only smoke remained. "We didn't," she said softly. "He did." By dusk, the fire was contained. The town gathered near the evacuation center. Tired faces, singed clothes, the kind of quiet that comes after almost losing everything. Sheriff Alvarez met Ethan at the entrance. "Your girl's safe," he said, voice rough. "They're bringing her in." Ethan's knees nearly gave out. He found Mia sitting on the steps, wrapped in a blanket, soot on her cheeks. When she saw him, she smiled through the tears. "I told you he'd be okay," she said. He knelt, pulling her close. "You mean you are?" But she shook her head. "No, Rusty. He was there. He let us out." The sheriff joined them, hat in hand. "We searched the ridge after the flames dropped," he said quietly. "Found tracks heading east. Looked like he made it." Mia's smile trembled but held. "Then he's free again." Ethan looked out toward the burned hills. The setting sun painted everything red, dust, ash, even the twisted remains of the ranch fences. For a moment, he imagined a wild silhouette moving out there, silent, untamed, unowned. He whispered to himself, "You're a miracle, you little bastard." That night, the wind died completely. The desert lay black and new under the stars, the smell of smoke fading to something clean. Mia couldn't sleep. She slipped from her cot, stepped outside the evacuation shelter, and looked toward the dark horizon. Somewhere beyond the ridge, a cry rose. Low, wild, defiant. A sound that didn't need translation. She closed her eyes, smiling through the tears. "Good night, Rusty," she whispered. "Thank you." The desert didn't answer, but the stars seemed to burn brighter for a moment, as if the whole sky had taken one deep, grateful breath. The fire was out, but the town still smelled like smoke. Ash coated the sidewalks like gray snow, and the mountains looked half-burned, half-reborn. The wind had gone quiet. No sirens, no engines, just the faint hum of power lines and the tired rustle of people trying to start over. In the courthouse on Main Street, Blake Harrow sat in handcuffs, his once slick hair matted with sweat. He looked smaller now, like the desert had finally stripped him of everything that wasn't real. Across from him, Sheriff Alvarez dropped a stack of folders onto the table. "Here's what we've got," the sheriff said. "Shipping manifests, fake rescue permits, payment logs, GPS records, and one hard drive full of your own surveillance footage. You ran the cleanest illegal trade ring I've ever seen, Blake, but not clean enough." Harrow's lips twisted into a tired smile. "You really think this changes anything? There'll always be someone else. People want the wild, Sheriff. They just don't want it free." Alvarez leaned closer. "Then maybe we'll remind them it's not for sale." He nodded toward the glass window, where Ethan Cole waited in the hall with Mia. Ethan had spent days cataloging evidence, sending photos and data to federal wildlife agents. He'd barely slept, but his eyes were steady. When the sheriff stepped out, Ethan asked, "Will he talk?" "He's already talking," Alvarez said, trying to blame his employees, the suppliers, everyone but himself. Mia stood quietly beside them, holding her sketchbook. On the first page was a drawing of Rusty, strong, alert, his injured leg healed. "He didn't just save us," she said softly. "He showed everyone what they were doing." Ethan smiled faintly. "Sometimes it takes something wild to wake up the civilized." Outside the courthouse, the town gathered to watch as Harrow was loaded into a transport van. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions he didn't answer. The crowd parted as the door slammed shut. The sheriff tipped his hat to Ethan. "We did good, Doc." Ethan looked past him toward the horizon where the burned hills met the morning light. "We got lucky," he said. "That's not the same thing." Mia tugged at his sleeve. "It's a start." They walked together to the edge of town. The fire had cleared miles of old brush, leaving behind open land that shimmered gold under the sun. Birds were already returning, cautious but persistent. Life, it seemed, had chosen to try again. Mia opened her sketchbook to a blank page. "I want to draw a new one," she said. "Not about fire or cages, just him. Free." Ethan crouched beside her. "Then draw the wind too," he said. "He's part of it now." She nodded, eyes bright, pencil moving lightly across the paper. Far off, beyond the blackened ridge, something stirred. A rustle, a cry carried on the clean morning air. It might have been wind. It might have been a bobcat. Ethan didn't need to know which. He laid a hand on Mia's shoulder, the desert opening wide before them, endless and alive. "Let's go home," he said. The girl looked up from her drawing, smiling. "We are home." 3 months after the fire, the desert began to bloom again. The ash that had buried the land turned out to be a strange kind of promise, feeding the roots, softening the soil, waking seeds that had slept through years of drought. Tiny bursts of green pushed through the gray earth. Life was stubborn that way. Mia Thompson walked along the edge of the canyon trail, her sketchbook tucked under her arm. The sun was low, the air still carrying a faint trace of smoke, but it smelled cleaner now, like rain that hadn't fallen yet. She had started helping Dr. Ethan Cole at the rebuilt wildlife clinic after school. They worked with injured hawks, orphaned foxes, even a coyote pup too small to hunt. But there was always one empty cage at the end of the row, Ethan's quiet way of remembering the one who had saved them all. "Still thinking about him?" Ethan asked that evening as they locked up. Mia smiled. "You mean Rusty?" "Always." Ethan nodded toward the ridge where the sun was slipping behind the rocks. "He's out there somewhere. They say wildcats can travel 30 miles a night when they're free. Then maybe he's already halfway to Mexico." "Or maybe," Ethan said, "he's just waiting for the right time to come back." That weekend, Mia took her bike and followed the road that wound into the canyons. The fire scars were fading now, replaced by tall grass and flowers she didn't know the names of. The silence was deeper out there, not empty, but patient. She stopped near the dry creek where the bus had broken down months before. The rocks were blackened still, but the water had returned, a thin, clear trickle running through the center. Mia sat and opened her sketchbook. She drew what she remembered, the glow of a firelight, the frightened faces of her classmates, and above them, the shape of a bobcat standing in defiance of the flames. A soft rustle pulled her from the page. She froze, pencil midair. The sound came again, from the far side of the wash. Slow, deliberate steps. Then she saw him. Rusty emerged from the brush like a ghost made of sunlight and dust. His coat had grown back sleek and thick. His injured leg carried only a faint scar. For a heartbeat, he looked exactly as he had the day she found him. Wild, cautious, unbroken. Mia didn't move. She just breathed his name. Rusty. He stopped a few yards away, head tilted, studying her the way he had in the garage that first night. The air between them hummed with something old and wordless. "I knew you'd make it," she whispered. He blinked slowly, the feline version of an answer. Then he stepped closer, paused silent on the sand. She could see the flecks of gold in his fur now, the faint shimmer of heat rising off his back. For a moment, the world shrank to just the two of them, the girl and the bobcat, survivors bound by an invisible thread. Mia wanted to reach out, but she didn't. Some distances, she'd learned, were sacred. Instead, she opened her sketchbook and turned it toward him. The drawing on the page showed a cat standing on a ridge under a vast, star-filled sky. "It's you," she said softly, "the way I see you." Rusty's ears flicked, and for a second, she thought she saw something like recognition. Then a breeze swept through the canyon, carrying the smell of sage and freedom. The bobcat turned, muscles rippling, and bounded toward the rocks. He paused once at the top of the ridge, looking back. His silhouette burned gold against the sinking sun, one last frame she would never forget, before he slipped into the wild beyond. Mia stood there long after he was gone, tears on her cheeks, but a smile in her eyes. The world felt bigger again. The fear that had followed her since that night in the fire lifted, replaced by something fierce and bright. She whispered into the wind, "Go on. The world's yours now." That evening, back at the clinic, Ethan was closing up when Mia burst through the door, dirt on her jeans and a grin that refused to fade. "He's alive," she said breathlessly. "I saw him. He's healed. He's free." Ethan studied her face and smiled, the kind that comes from deep relief. "I told you he'd make it." She nodded, still catching her breath. He looked at me like he remembered. "Maybe he did," Ethan said. "Maybe some things don't need taming to be loyal." Mia opened her sketchbook again and laid it on the counter. "Then this belongs here," she said. On the last page, she had drawn Rusty standing beneath the canyon sky, a streak of light falling behind him like a trail of stars. Ethan looked at it for a long moment. "That's him, all right," he said quietly. "The one who reminded us what wild means." Outside, the night settled over the desert. Still, vast, eternal. Somewhere in that expanse, a wildcat moved unseen, leaving only paw prints and silence behind. And if you listened long enough, between the rustle of the wind and the sigh of the sand, you might swear you could hear his breathing. Not trapped, not tamed, just free. 6 years later, the desert looks almost the same. maybe a little older, maybe a little wiser. The scars from the fire have long faded, replaced by mesquite and wildflowers that bloom stubbornly each spring. The wind still hums through the canyons, carrying with it the dry sweetness of sage and the memory of rain that almost fell. Mia Thompson is 20 now. She stands outside the new Cole Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, a place built from ash and second chances. The old clinic is gone, but its heart remains, in the smell of antiseptic and sand, in the walls lined with drawings of every animal that passed through. One sketch, framed near the entrance, shows a young bobcat poised beneath a wide Arizona sky. Beneath it, in small, neat handwriting, Rusty, the one who ran free. Mia works here full-time now, mentoring volunteers, teaching children how to listen to the land instead of conquering it. Sometimes, when the sun dips low, she still thinks she hears Ethan's voice echo through the corridors. Calm, steady, always ending with the same truth. Wild doesn't mean dangerous. It means alive. Every year on the anniversary of the fire, she hikes to the ridge above the canyon. The world feels bigger up there, silent, endless, honest. She carries her sketchbook still, though the pages are mostly filled with light and color now instead of flame. This evening, the wind picks up, scattering sand around her boots. The horizon glows red before the sun slips behind it. Then she sees it, a flicker of movement near the rocks. A bobcat, larger now, older, pauses at the ridge. For a heartbeat, their eyes meet across the distance. Gold meets gray. The air holds its breath. She doesn't call his name. She doesn't move. She just smiles. He turns, silent as smoke, and disappears into the brush. Mia sits down on the warm stone, letting the quiet wrap around her. Somewhere far below, the desert exhales, as if remembering everything that came before. The fire, the fear, the rescue, and the wild heart that refused to be broken. The desert remembers, and so does she.